Hi, my name is Dan Chung. I'm Executive Director of Crossing Borders, and this is Crossing Borders' 15th year of operation. And I thought there's no better way to commemorate our time than to talk with my good friend Mike Kim. He's also co-founder of Crossing Borders and a current member of our board. The summer of 2001 is when you went to China and visited for the first time. Could you tell us about that trip and how important that trip was for you?
I was doing financial planning, had my own business. It was going really well, and at that point I believe I was 24 at the time, and I knew I always wanted to go to China, and I was always fascinated with the country, so I cleared out 2 weeks and traveled pretty much every corner. I did the Northeast, southern tip, I did the northwest of China, all within those 2 weeks. And it was actually in the Northeast that I met a North Korean refugee for the first time. And back in 2001, we didn't really know about that situation, and many people didn't. And I was blown away. My response was, "What's a North Korean refugee? What are you talking about?" I didn't know about the situation of this exodus of North Koreans over into China. And that's when I first decided I had to get involved. I met a young 16-year-old girl, I believe she was at that time, refugee girl that was a victim of sex trafficking, heard her story, heard other similar stories, and learned about the famine, the persecution, oppression, the trafficking, the gulags, all of those things, the religious persecution, and decided that I'd have to do something to help.
We have a picture here of a group of kids that you helped, and could you briefly tell us that story? It's an amazing story you shared in your book.
This was back in end of 2003. So, and it's chapter 8 in the book that I recount this story of helping 4 teenagers traveling over, trying to get to South Korea, that had made the decision they didn't want to stay in China and hiding anymore. And we got them into the British consulate in Shanghai. And we took them on this journey to get them inside. It required a ton of planning, finances, a lot of people involved, and eventually they did get their freedom. Remember, the last meal that they wanted before entering, I let them choose their meal before entering the British consulate, was McDonald's. And so this is a picture of us in Seoul, Korea, after they had gotten to the other side, celebrating at McDonald's.
Amazing.
Yeah, one of the stories I remember from the border is one of the women we helped that was so thankful, and one of the things we were very active in back then was trying to give them some sort of skill set or have them do some sort of work that we could pay 100% of the proceeds towards their salary. And one of those things were making crosses, these kind of arts and crafts crosses that we would sell internationally on many continents. We did, we employed them, and we would see the transformation in her, a helpless person in need of welfare, to receiving a salary and having some dignity. And I remember the transformation, seeing that, witnessing that in her, and seeing her smile more. She'd say, "Teacher Kim, I would like to now treat you to a meal." And she said she wanted to cook a dinner, so she went out, bought the groceries, and set up a whole dinner, and we celebrated as she made her first meal as a presentation for our team. And seeing that transformation is truly a beautiful thing.
Let's talk about your book, Escaping North Korea, Defiance and Hope in the World's Most Repressive Country. Tell us about why you decided to write it, and all the way out to the impact that the book had.
I never thought I had a book in me or had a book around me with the people I was with, and so decided to set out on this journey. I asked every refugee and staff member at that time, should I write this book? Everyone without a doubt said, please, write a book and share the story so more people will help.
I remember this because, number one, there weren't that many books about North Korea at the time, so it really stood out. And then number two, when it did come out, the news about Laura Ling and Euna Lee getting captured by North Korean soldiers at the border, that was the context at the time when your book came out. And so your book, it was like a perfect storm of media attention as well. Can you talk about that?
Anderson Cooper had us on the show on AC 360, and then later the Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Please welcome to the show, Mike Kim. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
One of the most incredible stories.
I think in our wildest dreams we would not have thought it would have received the level of attention that it did, and I think there was just such curiosity and interest in North Korea, and also this North Korean refugee situation.
How different are we, Mike, than when we first started out?
I think very much so. One, we have the historical experience, so we have that perspective now. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way. I think we have a core team, both the internal team here in the U.S. and in China, also core donors that have been with us. So we've been able to experiment with what works and what doesn't. We know what programs have been good, what haven't been.
I'm very, very optimistic about where we're at.
I'm so impressed and thankful for our donors from the early days to the newer ones who have recently come in.
I think the story of CB is a story of personal sacrifice. To this day, the donors and the people around us sacrificing their resources to keep this thing going. I think for you, quitting your job, sacrificing your career to go out there not knowing whether you were going to be able to pay your bills for the next 3 months. People sacrificed for the past 15 years to keep this organization together, and that is inspiring.
People ask me sometimes, would you do it all over again? And I always say, without a doubt, these last 15 years, if we rewound the clock and I knew everything I knew now, I'd set out on this journey again, and it's changed me. I feel like we've helped a lot of people, and I feel very privileged to have been a part of it.